continue to support communities across the region through efforts in early childhood, economic development, and other key areas. Today, we're focusing on what this commitment to small towns has looked like in practice and what we've learned along the way.
To help us reflect on that journey, we are fortunate to hear from two people whose personal and professional lives have been shaped by the small towns in this region. Daniel Krause, who calls Harmony home, and Tim Penn, who grew up in Pittsburgh, will share reflections on what they see, what's changed, and what it means to pass the baton to the next generation of small town leaders. Please join us in welcoming Daniel and Tim.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Well, we were told by Katie's taking the pictures here, we have 20 minutes combined, so we're going to keep it moving. There's also a storm moving in, so we definitely want to keep it moving so none of you get caught in that. I'm supposed to mention a little bit about Keister, Minnesota. Many of you may not know Keister. Down in the southeast corner of Faribault County. You might know it from the Preparation H commercials that aired a few years ago. My brother-in-law was the mayor of Keister at the time, and some people in town were a little bit concerned about the Preparation H commercial. He said, it's a small town, we need all the publicity we can get. So that's Keister, Minnesota. I was in Congress for 12 years, so there is something called personal privilege, where members of Congress can get up and say something in the middle of a debate that has nothing to do with the debate. The point of personal privilege is this. I want to thank those that preceded me, Trixie Goldberg and Linda Jacobson, for handing over another great too. I hope I did anything for them. I want to thank current and past staff members because they're the ones that make it happen all across this 20-county region. And current and past board members for their leadership of the organization that has brought us to this 40th anniversary. The slogan of our foundation for at least the last 10 years has been collaborating for regional vitality, and that's really how we get things done. And when we look at our small town work, that's really how we do it. We try to model that in our programming, but when we go into communities, whether it's something as simple as a Paint the Town grant, part of that grant is show us community collaboration around this project. We want to see lots of people involved. One example is Preston, Minnesota, where there's a mural downtown that depicts the history and the uniqueness of the town. And they did it they had a local artist design it. It's on the side of their downtown library and city center. But they did it kind of paint by numbers. And they had elementary school students, and they had senior citizen groups, and church groups, and community civic groups all take turns painting this huge mural. And so that's how we get things done in rural. Whether it's Keister or Waseca or Harmony, that's kind of the way we do it. We don't sit around waiting for someone else to do it for us. We just look at our neighbors and we join hands and we figure it out. And what I love about the Initiative Foundation is that we're not the be-all and the end-all of what's going on in southern Minnesota, but we're a helpful partner, a helpful complement to what's happening here in this part of the state. We try to layer our resources, whether it's through small town grants, and virtually every small town in this part of the state has gotten some of those grants over time, whether it's a small town paint program, same thing there, or whether it's helping small towns create and maintain community funds. Back to Keister, we're part of the United South Central Community Foundation, which comprises all of the towns that are in their school district. 2 weeks ago, because I still have offered venue to be helpful when I can be, I went down to the Whiskey and Wine fundraiser in Athens, Minnesota, which is also a multi-town community fund supporting the towns that are in that south district.
You can choose to be very selective of which events you'd like to attend.
And then, when I started this job, we had 11 community funds. I think when this organization started, the first community fund was one on Mingo. Now we're up to 35 community funds, of which the Adams South Upland School District Fund is one of the most recent ones. But just like the Initiative Foundation, where you build an endowment and then you have these perpetual resources that you can spend year in and year out for the benefit of your programming, that's what we do for the small towns in this region, is to help them build and maintain a community fund so they can invest in their own future. There's a book by a guy named Jack Schultz called Boomtown USA, and it says there are 7 keys to small town success. I won't go through all the other 6, but one of those keys is the community fund. And the community fund reflects leadership in the community and investments that matter to the future of that community. And so with that, that's kind of my story and my passion. But I couldn't have been happier last year when my board of directors chose Benya Kraus to take my place. I've known Benya's family for 50 years. In fact, her uncle, Ron, sitting at the back table there, was my first college intern when I was a Minnesota State Senator representing the Wasikik area. So I knew she came from good stock and good roots. And what I really love about Benya is that not only is she a young leader that can take this organization forward, but like me, she's rooted in and passionate about this part of the state and the small towns that comprise our region. So now it's her turn.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. We kind of took this duo conversation on the road when I first started in June, and as you'll maybe see a theme through tonight of how does a community in a region work through transition and change. And I remember our road trip where we spent a lot of hours on the road together. We hit all 20 counties on our road trip. And as I thought about a region in transition and how we move through it, I kind of was like, I think everybody just needs to take long road trips together. Because I think at the heart of it, we spent, a lot of time talking first just about work and, the mission, vision, values of the foundation. And then I think just through the hours and hours on the road, it just started turning into, who are you? What places and who are the people that have made you? And why does that drive you still today? And what is the vision that you have for Southern Minnesota? And what was it like to be in Congress? And was it always so bad? Was there a day long, long ago where there were bright times and people actually worked together? But it was just the storytelling and sharing that we had on those long road trips that I think, two people who have very different upbringings, I think found a lot of shared similarity in values and beliefs, even if we, debated some things in the car, including, hey, this is not where we're supposed to end up. Please let me take out Google Maps to...
I pride myself on knowing almost every back road in Southern Minnesota, but when we went, and she won't let me forget this, when we went to Wabasha, I drove into the neighborhood adjacent to the golf course where our meeting was to be held, instead of into the golf course, so my bad.
But I think, through all that time spent building relationship, it was like, Tim Penny and Brenda Krause are actually not so different after all. And I think also what I just so deeply appreciated is that every place we went, Tim would do exactly what he's doing now, of sharing his reputation and legacy of relationships so openly and generously with me. And this affirmation that she may look different than me, she may have come from a different place than me, but she's of the same stock. And to have someone who is so beloved like Tim open the door for you in that way, and to say, Southern Minnesota is in good hands, you can trust this person, really made the difference.
when she told me she was going to apply for this job a year ago in January, I said, look, I went to Congress at age 30, so I'm in no position to tell you you're too young to apply for this job. And again, I was delighted when she was selected because, as I said a moment ago, if we're investing in the future of rural, it's the next generation that has to take us there. And so we have a new generation leader. I almost get teary-eyed when I think about that, but she's going to be great.
Katie gave us some potential talking points, and honestly, we've kind of already gone really off script in our winging it. But as we reflect on just decades, right, 10 years ago was when we made a commitment that we were really going to be investing into small towns. We also wanted to have a conversation about why small towns matter. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, both why small towns matter to us personally, but also why small towns matter to the nation and to the state and to our region, and then also ultimately why do small towns matter to SMIF and now, in the past, and into the future. So with that, I'll maybe just kick it off by saying my small town story is a little different from your small town story, because my small town story starts in Bangkok, Thailand, which if you've seen cities in the US, Asia takes it to a whole new level. I was born in Bangkok to a mother who is from a farming family in northern Thailand. We still have our mango farm. And to a father who is part of a sixth-generation farming family in Waseca County. And they had me and my brother in Thailand, and every summer as a kid, though, we would always spend it on the family farm in Waseca. And I went to college thinking I was going to major in international relations and only float between the world's largest cities. And then I just had a summer where I spent it back on the family farm. And I remember my Uncle Paul would take me on four-wheeler rides across all the farmland, and he would just tell me these stories of the story behind the land that we were seeing. The story of Moonin Marsh that was saved by the sacrifice that my Grandpa Jim laid and advocated and worked with the volunteers and neighbors in this community to get that preserved both today and for future generations. And he also told me of the story of the farm crisis, of as we were going along on four-wheeler rides, of which farms couldn't make it. And not just the farms themselves, but when your family is part of the identity of that farm and you lose it, so many families were lost in the process too. And so I was left with this, I call my quarter-life existential crisis of, wow, what do I owe a place that has meant so much to my family, has shaped my family? What do I owe that type of legacy? What do I owe my Grandpa Jim? And does it mean belonging to everywhere, in every city, in the world? I mean, to a certain point, yes, we're part of a larger world too. But I also felt that in order to care about the world, I ultimately needed to care about and be rooted to and accountable to a place. And so after college, I founded an organization called Lead for America that was all about trying to get hometown talent to return and invest in their hometowns and serve in public service. And through that was my excuse to return to Waseca. Today, I call Harmony home. Woo! You can see also there's a lot of Harmony contingency here today. And we'll talk about it in the panel, but it was a town that welcomed me and my family, my growing family, and said, everything that is built here is because of the vision that we've inherited and that we are building together. And so when I think about why that matters to the country, why it matters to the foundation, is we cannot get through hard times if we don't figure out how we get through it together. Because when we get scared and we get isolated and we go back into, which is very human instinct, and we turn into ourselves, we lose sight of all that we can be building and preserving and creating together. And when I think about the foundation, Tim, you really spearheaded why we care about small towns. But for me, I think about the future of our small towns is how do we invest in local ownership? How do we invest in the collaboration of solving mighty challenges that might be out of the purview of the foundation doing it alone, like getting fresh water into our communities, right? Or infrastructure investments. SMIF is one part of a larger challenge or solution, but how do we be a backbone to bring partners together to solve mighty challenges? And then also, how do we grow community leadership? Both to get involved and volunteer and serve in civic roles, but I think ultimately you first need to fall in love with your place if you're going to serve it. And so I love this tagline, I love where you live, because before you can step up and do anything else, you gotta learn to love where you live.
Well, that's my life. I love Southern Minnesota. I had the honor to serve 18 years in politics and then 18 years at the foundation. Lucky guy. Also lucky, as I mentioned earlier, to have a great staff and great leadership. We're talking a lot about small towns now, but my board chair, Jean Burkhardt, some years ago, really wanted us to find a way to do more for small towns. And I think the very first year, we did like $100,000 worth of small town grants. When you add it all up today, with our partnerships with Bremer, the Taylor Family Farm Foundation, and our own resources, and the Paul Johnson family, it's probably over $1 million that we're pushing out the door for small towns across this 20-county region. But as I mentioned a moment ago, small towns, they don't have a lot of directions to turn for outside help. Hard for them to attract state or federal money. Hard for them to attract money from the larger foundations, no offense to the larger foundations in the room. But SMIF and its sister foundations are all about small towns all across rural Minnesota. And what we try to do is to be a helpful complement and a helpful supplement to what the leaders in those towns need in order to make things happen. So that's who we are, that's what we do.
And here you've got two generations, but I'd be remiss if I didn't also say there is also a third generation, not here in this room, but here I think in spirit, because I left a 10-week-old baby home tonight, who was turned 10 weeks today. And as I think about why small towns to the foundation, the answer is it is just who we are. Right? When we think about the wealth that gets reinvested back into the foundation, much of that wealth was built by people who became the people they are because of the small towns that they were raised in. And when I think about this next generation in a very personal way now, when my husband and I were thinking actually about naming our child, his name is James Powell, and he's named after both of our grandfathers, both of our farming grandfathers. And we realize that when we think about the person we want him to become, what better name or what better path or foundation to set by giving him a legacy of past generations who have made him because they made us, and the places they belong to made them. And so I hope, my wish, my toast for James Powell, is that the places that have made me and my family and made you and you in your family, he will inherit that legacy too. And I think that's a huge part of what this foundation is about. How do we build and reinvest in the legacies that have shaped us?
Well, there's an old yes. Thanks for as you've seen one small town, you've seen one small town. And it's kind of a laugh line. But what we believe, and what people in these towns believe, is that every town has assets to build on. And that's what we're here for. So again, thank you for your partnership with us. Getting back to my opening remarks about collaborating for regional vitality. All of you in this room represent that collaboration. And together, we're making things happen.
And a round of applause for the legacy that I get to inherit from Tim. Thank you.